I am so honored because I'll tell you, I've met a lot of CEOs and founders in my lifetime of businesses, and I think that what really makes this place special is that somebody a long time ago had to have the courage and vision to be able to go, you know what, I'm gonna go create this. I need to create something that's going to impact people. And for whatever reason, that little crazy vision and idea turned into a business that is represented in almost every single country around the world with 10,000 plus customers, changing lives, helping businesses succeed and be able to create playbooks that will make them have a lot of longevity. And that person is coming to the stage right now. And so what I want to do to kick this thing off, can you guys please get on your feet to kick us off this morning? Yes, and we're going to stand up and we're going to get a lot of energy and I want to hear a lot of woos. Can you please help me welcome to the stage the CEO and founder of Trainual, Chris Ranzio.
You have the clicker? All right. Thank you, everybody. I mean, when it starts with a standing ovation, it's all downhill from here. All right, so I showed this slide yesterday that I actually registered the domain name for Trainual, trainual.com, on November 18th of 2014. So this weekend is 10 years since I registered the domain name. Now, the first 3 years, I didn't do much with it. Have any of you registered a domain name and not really done anything with it? Okay, so I registered this domain, I had this idea, I thought it's such a good idea, everyone's gonna want this. And at the time I was doing consulting. I had a boutique operations consulting firm, which I'm gonna talk more about this morning. And I thought, okay, I've got a bunch of people that are paying me tens of thousands of dollars to come and just give them an hour of advice or a day of advice. Surely they will buy a software for 99 bucks. Of course. And so I prepped these videos and this email launch sequence, and I thought I'm such an advanced marketer. And I blasted it out to my list of a couple hundred people, and I sat back waiting for the dollars to roll in. And I got 3 sales. 3 customers bought the product in 2014, going into 2015. And so I thought, okay, I'm not meant to be a software CEO. Back to the drawing board, let me just go start consulting again. And for the next 3 years, all Trainual was is a product for my consulting firm. All I used Trainual for was to house the information after I would do the work of working with companies. And I was working with these companies to help them grow, to help them get organized, to help them scale. And so I thought it'd be fun to put a presentation together to kick this off, to teach you what I was doing as a consultant, some of the principles that I was using, the frameworks I was using when I was consulting prior to Trainual. And anyway, after I would consult, I'd put them on Trainual. A few people started using it, then a few dozen people started using it. And in 2017, going into 2018, we decided to try it again. And we launched the business. And within a year, we had over 1,000 companies on the product. And so we got it right the second time. So for all those domains you're sitting on, maybe there's some gold to mine. Maybe you just have to actually try again. All right, so this presentation, what if the secrets to scaling your business were just hiding in plain sight? What if the 10x or the 100x unlock in your business is right there and you're just not focused on it? You can't spot it. And you need some extra outside perspective to help you clarify how to move forward. That's what this is about. But why do some businesses scale and others don't? Is it luck? Is it just happenstance? I was with a couple friends last week that came into town, and they were telling me this crazy story. So these friends, they're amazing people. They single-handedly fund this school in Rwanda. And all these kids, hundreds of kids go to this school and they pay for everything. They're very philanthropic. And so they went out to visit and they see all these kids playing football or soccer, in the yard. And there's these bottles of brown water that the kids are drinking from. And they said, well, either they're gonna drink dirty water or they're not gonna drink anything. That's the problem. That's the problem they're dealing with. And so they thought, okay, well, why don't we buy some land next to the school and we'll dig a well. And that way they're self-sustaining and they'll have clean water for the first time. So they buy the land, they dig this well, and this is weeks later, they're at home, the crews are there, and they get a text message on the phone. And it's like the black rocks at the bottom of the well, and there's this black liquid all around the rocks. And so they said, all right, why don't we figure out what this is? Let's scoop this up, drive 6 hours away because this is a war-torn kind of area. Let's drive away from the area, get it tested. Turns out, pure oil that they struck in this well. And so they go back and they're trying to dig a fence around the property and to see what's there. And they start hitting these blue stones. And they bring the stones up and they decide they're going to drive 6 hours in the other direction and get these stones tested. And it turns out it's pure sapphire. Is that what happens in our business? Do we just strike it rich one day? No? Is running a successful business just like a needle in a haystack, or like a 4-leaf clover, or catching lightning in a bottle? I don't think this works. It's not a good strategy. Is this where the light bulb came from? Lightning in a bottle? Is that where that phrase is from? I don't know. Is business just luck? I was in Oregon. I say Oregon, the state, but I say Oregon Trail. Does anybody else do that? So I was in Oregon doing this farm or fall weekend with my family, and all the pumpkins look like this, except some look like this. They're massive. Is that random? Does that just happen? Why is that? Well, success in business is not random. If you have a product or service that people want, and you've got great people, and you've got a great system for profitably delivering that product or service and adding value, then you're gonna have a great business. There's some luck involved, but it's not driven by luck. And so as I started trying to pick this apart, like what makes some businesses scale and why not others, I looked at some US data. So it's harder to get international data. In the US, there's about 34.5 million businesses. And so of those, 26 million businesses are non-employer businesses, meaning it's a single person, a household, they haven't put anyone on payroll yet. Then another 8.5 businesses are employer businesses. They've taken that leap to hire somebody and delegate and put somebody else on payroll. And then above that, only 57,000 businesses get to 10 million in annual revenue. And if you go to that next 10x, 21,000 businesses get to 100 million in annual revenue. Now, I know we've probably got people here across the spectrum and some multiples larger than this. But what I thought was so interesting is when you look at that jump from the bottom to the middle, about 1 in 3 businesses take that leap. 1 in 3 businesses decide that they have something that they want to employ other people and actually scale beyond them. And then when you look at the top, 1 in 3 businesses that make it to 10 million end up making it to 100 million of revenue. When you figure out how to scale, you keep scaling. But that middle section is where things break down. Those 8.4 million employer businesses, only 1 in 145 ever make it to that 10 million mark of revenue. And I feel like this is the problem that we're trying to solve. This is that line that we're trying to break through. Why is that so hard? Okay, so if I just had to give you like the basic summary of this presentation, of this framework, I drew this out on my iPad. If you can organize your business so it's not such an awful thing to run, and then you can simplify it down to what's really working, and then you can continually improve the thing that's working so it works better and better and better for you, and then at the same time, parallel to that, you become a better leader with a bigger vision. That is how businesses scale. And so I'm going to talk about these 4 things this morning as kind of setting the stage for the rest of today. And you're going to hear from some amazing speakers today, but it's all about this idea of organizing and scaling your business. All right, Organized Chaos. So this was the name of my consulting firm. And organize is the first step in this framework. So this may not come as a surprise to you, but I have a very organized life. My closet is color-coded, all the shirts. Does anybody else do that? A couple of you. I see you, okay. So my closet's got all the colors organized. My desk is barren. except for the couple things. I'm like adjusting my mouse to be parallel to my keyboard. Call me crazy, that's how I operate. When I went to college, my roommate was very different. Like, you walk in and he had 42 hoodies lined over his desk chair, and there's towels hanging from the side of the computer monitor. And some people can live in chaos, not me. Some people can live in chaos. Does anybody feel like their business is a little bit chaotic? A little bit? There's some chaos? All right. Chaos is not a terrible thing in business. Chaos means you've got opportunity. There's a lot happening in your business, and that's good. Chaos in business can be a good thing. But chaos, when you're growing, is bad. Because if you're growing through chaos, you don't know when the growth will stop. If you don't know why you're growing and your business is just a disaster, you don't know when it's going to stop. And so I believe you need to organize the business if you want your growth to be predictable. You need to be able to wrap your arms around the business and make sure it's organized. So the company that I had organized chaos, we would fly into a business and we would spend 3 to 5 days just digging deep, interviewing all their people, understanding their workflows, their operations, and understanding where they were trying to get to so that we could come back and explain all the chaos. It was like unpacking the mess of their business. And so I want to take you through the framework or exactly what I did with businesses. And this is going to be the most detailed slide of any of this. So stand by, but I'm going to give you this whole framework here. All right, so first, I call it the 3 C's. There's context, chaos, and clarity. So the context of the business is where are we going? Where are we trying to get to? The chaos of the business is what is all the stuff that's happening that's getting in my way? And then the clarity is what should I focus on right now? And that was the very simple process that I used with each of these businesses. And so just to go through this, the context piece, we would start with their 1 to 10 year goals, both personally and professionally. Where is this company going to be in 10 years in terms of revenue, in terms of number of employees, in terms of some kind of outcome for the business? Where are you going to be in 10 years? How many employees do you have? What's your personal income look like? Where do you live? What does your family look like? So I was wrapping my head around that personal vision for the founder, the team, and the company. Next, I would go through their business model. So start to finish, how does $1 flow through your company? This was for me to get educated, and this is also important for every one of your people to understand. But as I went through their business model, I would inevitably hear things that are kind of stuttering points and bottlenecks, things that are broken. And so simply zooming out and mapping your business from start to finish, here's how we get leads, here's how we close those leads, here's how we turn them into products and services that we sell, here's how we deliver those products and services. Here's how we charge for them. Here's how we retain those customers and continue to engage those customers. That big macro process is a great place to start to uncover problems in the business. And so we'd map out their process. Then after that, we would go through just the individual department processes, and we'd go a little deeper on each department. We'd go through their people, their org chart, kind of who does what. And again, this is like a data dump with the founding team to really understand the context of the business today and the context of where they're trying to go in the future. All right, the next piece was chaos. Like I mentioned, employee interviews, collecting deep feedback from every employee in a confidential way was how I did this. And so I would sit down with people, everyone at a smaller company, and I would tell them the next 30 minutes are totally off the record. I'm not going to report on anything specific that you said. I'm just looking for the commonalities of what everyone is saying. All of this data is going to go back to the founding team. I'm not trying to isolate individual people. And so those employee interviews were a safe space to vent. It's something we should all be doing in our business. What I was looking for were 3 things: issues, ideas, and inefficiencies. The problems, the known problems in the business, all captured in one place. The ideas or suggestions that people have on how to make the business better, all captured in one place. And then the inefficiencies, the slow processes, the things that would break at scale, all captured in one place. Has anyone done an exercise like this to gather all of those things in one massive list with 200 to 300 things you could do in the business? If you're looking for that one thing that Marcus said, this is the chaos in your business. All of that feedback gathered in one spot is gold. but then you get to decide what to do with it. So we'd capture all of those things over the course of those 3 to 5 days. And then what we would do is we'd put together this plan, and it started with quick wins. Quick wins was anything we could act on in 2 weeks or less. And so there were some suggestions that people had, like, I can't do the financial reporting work that I need to do because I wish I had a second monitor to keep the report up so I could type over here. Gosh, that would save me like 4 hours a day. Or my desk chair has been broken for a year, or the bathroom sink leaks. These little tiny problems in our business. The reason you pick out a handful of those quick wins, those problems, is because if you can fix those within 2 weeks, you show your teams that all the feedback they gave was for a good reason, that you're actually going to act on the feedback that they gave. This is about building trust with our teams. And so you're looking for some of that low-hanging fruit that you can take from their suggestions and act on immediately to build trust so that they know the momentum is starting and they're going to do what they say. So we would solve their quick wins. And then the next thing we would do is we would start to group together these big prioritized projects, the things that we'd work on for the next 90 days. And we'd make sure that they're solvable within 90 days. Maybe it's ramping up a new software. Maybe it's hiring a position that's really needed in the business. Whatever these top few priorities were, we would decide what they were and agree on them as a team. And then everything else on the list, we would agree we're not doing or not doing yet. Some of the things we would just scrap from the list forever and say this is something we're never going to do, and some of the things were saved for later. And then we would do a big meeting with the whole team, and we would explain, here's the things we just solved. You saw us do that. We mean business. We're serious. Here's the things we're going to do this quarter that we're really serious about. Here's the suggestions that you gave that we've considered and we're not going to do for these reasons. And here's the things that are on the list that we're going to consider for later, and we'll come back to those next quarter or next year. This simple process builds trust. It builds momentum. And what it starts to do is it's like a chaos tourniquet, it stops the chaos from happening. It as a company, you're making a decision to address the chaos, to fix it. Would it be helpful if I just gave you all the sheets I used consulting-wise? So if you scan this, I figured these are like sitting in my Dropbox folder for 10 years. You might as well just use them in your business. These are all the questions that I used as a data dump with the leading teams to just get out of their mind the chaos in the business. So take this back to your company. 3, 2, 1. All right. So then when it comes to your team, the questions that I would sit down and ask, I've got dozens and dozens of these, but 3 that I really like that I think all of you should steal. The first one, what are some things past companies did or had that you think would be useful here? This is like a weird, imagine asking this to your spouse or something, like, what'd your last boyfriend do that you really like? It's a strange, right? Like none of us want to ask that question because you don't want to seem not as good. But if you ask your employees this question, what you're saying is like, what best practices do you know that you're the expert for that we can bring into this business? It shows them that you value them. And they all have ideas. So ask this question. The next one, if there was 2 or 3 times as much work going through here, what would break? Everyone has an answer to this question. And they think about it through the lens of their position. What would break in your role? Because you couldn't possibly do 2 or 3 times as much work, so what would break? And it gets at those inefficiencies. And then the last one, if you could spend $1,000 on something at the company, what would you use it for? And it can't be paying yourself more. But if it is, let me know. And this is where you get all those little tiny things. They're like, well, I would fix this problem over there. Or maybe I would pay Larry in the warehouse extra money because he's here all the time and his kids have this problem that you don't know about. You learn so much about the business just asking this question. So ask these 3 questions, take these back. And again, the lesson with organizing is it's the same when we like clean our houses or clean our garages or clean any space. You have to take everything out of the cabinets. You have to unpack everything to see what you have so that you can put it back in a more organized way, so that you can color code things and you can organize it and make it look good. So do this for your business. This is the first step to scaling. Chaos does not scale. So solve your chaos first. All right, next, simplify. So scaling through simplification. What's the difference between these two things? Between Cheerios and, what's this called? The Scrub Daddy. Any thoughts? They both soak up water, liquid? No? Here's the difference. Cheerios has dozens of different varieties, right? You've probably had a lot of those. The pumpkin ones are really good right now. Cheerios has a lot of varieties, but they're also a very mature company. They've been around for a long time. And so after years and years, decades and decades of brand building, they have customer affinity. They're able to offer different SKUs because you go wanting to buy Cheerios and you're like, well, I'll just try one of these flavors or I'll get 3 of these flavors. This is how they expand their revenue as a mature company. Scrub Daddy has sold $1.3 billion of yellow sponges. I don't know if any of your businesses are bigger than $1.3 billion of one product, but they scaled to size selling that. And it's only been in the last year or so that they started offering like pink sponges. Right? So in your business, are you offering 1,000 varieties of things, or are you scaling off something really simple? I'll give you another example. My first business, video production company. I still have my business card. This is the back of my business card. So it was called Firewire Films. And we did weddings and corporate videos, commercials, bar mitzvahs, sporting events, theatrical events. Like the list goes on and on and on and on and on. What it could have said is, I will do anything for money. So as the business evolved, I decided we were better at some of these things than others. We made more money at some of these things than others, and I slowly started to peel back and refine this list. By the time I sold this business, we had streamlined down to only doing the most expensive sporting events that you participate in outside of school. Figure skating, equestrian, gymnastics, synchronized swimming. The things people pay a lot of money to participate in, that they wanted commemorated on video. And at the beginning, I thought people want incredible video quality. They want these animations with explosions, and they want the royalty-free music, and they want cool, swoopy transitions, and they want the people's names in the lower thirds. And we spent so much money on editing all these videos. And by the end of the business, all we sold were these little USB drives, these little flash drives, with HD unedited video that you would take as you walked out of the venue. So we shot it, we put it on these drives, and we sold hundreds, thousands of these things. And we did events in all 50 states around the country. That's all we sold. So the secret here for your business is you're doing too much. You are definitely doing too much. How can you simplify down what it is that you offer? And so a couple ways to think about this. Really, really simple, basic. If you make a spreadsheet and in one column you put all of the products you sell or services that you offer, think about it in terms of these 3 variables. First, how much money do you make top line on that thing? Second, how profitable is this thing? And third, do you enjoy it? Would you be happy doing 10 times as much of that and making that a bigger chunk of your business? So simple. You can go into your QuickBooks or whatever you use, export a report by service or product that you sell, and have this kind of built for you. And then you just have to think about, do I like it? Am I enjoying this? Do I want to scale with this? Do the same thing for your customers or the verticals or industries that you serve. Same thing, list out all of your customers, show revenue by customer, profit margin by customer, and would you be happy with 10 times more of that customer? And then you can start to think like, what is the reason? Why do I like selling this product or offering this service? Why do I like working with this customer or this customer? And you start to cross things off the list and say, next year, we're not selling this. We're done selling this, even though people are asking for it. Because selling that product or that service, even though it's building those incremental dollars that you think you need, what it's doing is it's taking your capacity and your team's capacity. It's taking your attention. And you need that attention and that capacity to focus on doing more, doing 10x of the other thing. So you need to pare back a little bit and do a little bit less. The most expensive cost in your business is opportunity cost. If you don't focus in on a couple things, you're never going to scale. Businesses get complex over time, like the Cheerio brand, like the Cheerio example. But if you start complex, then you don't know what's working. And so probably you're doing too much and you have too much going on and selling in your business. And if you want to scale, you need to offer fewer things. And it's actually easier. It gets easier with fewer things. Okay, next step here. Create a culture of continuous improvement. Always getting better at the things we do. Does anyone know what my favorite song is? Anyone know what my favorite song is? Can we get a little snippet?
This is how we do it.
This is how we do it. Awesome. Thanks for all dancing and singing with me. That was just like I imagined. But the most dangerous thing in business is when this is how we do it becomes this is how we've always done it. Right? This is how we do it. We say that all the time at Trainual. We love that song. This is how we do it, but this is how we currently do it. This is how we do it today. And you don't want those things to get stale because then it becomes this is how we've always done it. And that's when innovation dies and that's when progress dies. And so you always have to constantly be improving, always improving. And so here are just a few ideas of how you can always be improving. So first, capture, empower, and automate are the three categories here. You want to capture your best practices, what exists today. You want to empower your team to have ownership over those processes. And then you want to make sure that there's a system and a culture for always making those better. We'll go through these pretty quickly. So first, capturing flowcharts. If you were here yesterday, mapping things out in flowcharts is a really easy way to zoom out of the business and just draw some boxes and lines to map out a macro process. You can get your whole team around a conference table if you're in person, or your whole team on a Zoom call and share the screen or the little whiteboard thing on Zoom and say, how do we do this? Capture it. Processes are not created, they're collected. They already exist in your business, you're already doing them. But you have to have some way of getting it in a common place where you can all look at it. And so flowcharts are a great starting point for that. Next, screen recording. This is like you're gonna do the work anyway. Push the record button and record your screen as you do the work. Capture the process. Written SOPs. You can use tools like ours, you can use ChatGPT, you can just write down, have anyone on your team write down in simple words how they do something, and it's really not that hard. And then capture, we actually have a free Chrome plugin, if you use Chrome, that will watch what you do as you do it and write the SOP for you. It'll take screenshots as you're doing it, and it'll write the SOP for you. It's called Trainual Capture, so you can look that up. Capture your existing processes today, so that you at least have a place to start from. Next, empowering your team. So first, you cannot control everything. And I know a lot of you have much bigger businesses and you're already beyond this, but even at the highest level, there are processes you should be letting go. So every process, every way you do something in a business needs to have an owner, and you want to own less and less in the business. Then you want to praise your team constantly for innovation. So work this into your all hands meetings. Talk about the new process, the new way to do things that Rachel came up with or whatever it is, and celebrate the heck out of that, because that's how people want to develop more processes. And then you can use language. Like if you use a tool like ours, I hear a lot of people say, is it in Trainual? Check Trainual, put this in Trainual. When it becomes part of your vernacular, then it becomes something that everybody wants to do and they feel empowered to do. This is not a top-down thing. This is something that everybody contributes to. All right, and then automating the upkeep of your processes. So first, institute 90-day cycles where everybody reviews their processes that they own every 90 days to make sure that they're still accurate. It just becomes a repeating task, an auto reminder. It's very easy to do. The next thing is every time you hire somebody new, the hiring manager reviews the training that they're going to be assigned and make sure it's still up to date. So this is a mechanism in your business. It's a repeating task in your business to make sure that the content is always up to date. And then you can use our tool for content verification. So I talked about this yesterday, but making sure there's an owner that signs off on this every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever it is, that the content is verified, makes the whole organization trust that this is the newest best practice. So all of this is just simple things to make sure that your processes stay up to date. Did anyone used to watch the Undercover Boss show? Yeah, I love that show. So when I had my video company, it had first come out, and we had, like I said, hundreds of camera operators in venues across America, and we would hire crews, sometimes just for the day that we had never worked with before. And so I would fly into different cities, and I would jump on the camera and do the work just to kind of mingle with the crews and understand what they thought about our process and how we operated. And they would complain to me about how their hands were cold in the rink, and so we would buy gloves for all the camera operators the next time around, or they would talk about the long hours and how they were paid, and we would create a new system for setting that expectation up front. And so just being on the floor and working with the people, I learned so much about how to make the business better. And so the tip here is just get in the mix. If there's jobs that you haven't done in a long time, what's stopping you from doing it? What's stopping you from jumping into the station and making a smoothie? Or, going with one of your crews and putting on the hard hat? Just do the work. Field some design requests and see what that's like. There's the work that your company does you may not have done in a long time. Just get in the mix and you'll learn a lot. And the next tip here, if maybe you can't go undercover in the business, you can hire someone else to do it. So when I was in college, I interned with the New England Patriots, and people always make the deflated football joke, like, was I deflating? No, I was not doing that. But I was in quality control as an intern for 1 season with the Patriots. It was the coolest job ever. They paid me to track how many minutes it took from the time I got off the exit in the highway to the parking lot, how long it took from where I parked to walking to the stadium. They give me an envelope of cash with instructions to go buy a hot dog and rate how warm it was, or to buy a jersey in the store and tell them if I had a good experience with the clerk that checked me out, or to go ask a security guard where the nearest ATM was, write down their badge number and if they knew the answer. I was in quality control, and then later in the game, I'd go under the field and I would report on all of this. It was so cool. Are you doing this for your business? Who is secret shopping your business? That's where you, again, capture the chaos, capture the ideas, the inefficiencies, so you can be always improving. So if you don't have secret shoppers for the business, get a friend to do it. Get a friend to call in, to book a demo, to go through some of your processes and tell you what they learned. All right, and then the last piece here is becoming that visionary leader. So you've got that cycle in the business, organize, simplify, improve, organize, simplify, improve. But at every point in the business, you need to be leveling yourself up. One of my mentors told me that I need to constantly be working to be the CEO that my company needs 1 year from now. I need to always be working to be the CEO the company needs a year from now. And I think that's the same in any position in the company. When you're a company that does $5 million, the COO of a $5 million company is very different than the COO of a $20 million company. The head of HR at a business with 45 employees is very different than the head of HR at a business with 150 or 250 employees. So you constantly need to be a more visionary version of yourself, leveling up. And so it starts with this thing I showed you at the beginning, with that context, with setting goals, knowing where you're going. And so you've got the sheet that I already shared with you, but you need to have a picture, a future vision of where you're going. So when I would ask my consulting clients, where are you going? What's your vision for the future? I literally had one client tell me They were gonna build an underwater city. And then I had another client tell me they would be super happy driving their kids to work every day, 5 days a week. And so our visions can vary dramatically, but we've got to have a lot of clarity on what that vision is for us personally and not compare it to anyone else. And so when you've got a good vision, when you've got that goal for yourself personally, I think it's kind of like this tree in the distance, you know? And if you are in a field and you see this tree in the distance and then you look down and you walk toward the tree looking at your feet, you will never get there. But if every once in a while you pop your head up and kind of course correct, you'll get there. And so goals and milestones with your goals are just like walking towards something in the distance. I kind of forgot I put this slide in here. This is my swim at the Ironman race that I did when your head's down in the water. I'm not a good swimmer. This is definitely my weakest part of that. But when your head's in the water, you have no idea where you're going. And so you swim a bunch of meters in the wrong direction, then you pop up, you say, where are all the people? Oh, the people are this way. Turn around, swim that way. So anyway, you want to have goals. You need to have these goals on the horizon. But slowly you need to be peeling responsibilities off your plate. So yesterday I talked about our delegation planner in Trainual. I won't dive too much into that, but it's a way to visualize the responsibilities that are on your plate. And before we had the tool in our system, I used to do this as just a simple spreadsheet. And I would list out on one hand side all the things that I did in the business, and then I would highlight things that I wanted to take off my plate that someone else could do in the business. And every quarter I'd pick a few of those things. And so my challenge for you is as you think about all of the responsibilities on your plate, think about one thing that you want to dedicate your quarter to, that you should be focusing more on, and 3 things that you need to carve off of your plate, that you need to delegate to someone else. And we all have these things at any size business. You've got a business that requires you and all the things you do in it. And as you shed those day-to-day responsibilities, you finally get to a place where the company runs without you. And that's where the opportunity is. That's where you get to decide, where can I have the biggest impact in the business? But you have to have a systematic way of doing this, quarter over quarter, taking a little bit more off your plate. And you also need space for the vision. So when I moved out to Arizona, what I loved about Arizona is just how much space there is. You can see for miles and miles. I grew up mostly in Boston and Chicago. I talked about that yesterday. And in Boston, you can't see around the trees. You can't see around the next hill, the next corner. I'm sure it's like that where a lot of you live. And what I loved about moving out here is I could see for 100 miles or something. Vision needs space to appear. You need to create that space for yourself. And so I've done this in a few ways in the business. At the end of day yesterday, Jonathan and I told a story about leaving the company for a month and going to Antarctica and running the race that we ran down in Antarctica. Getting totally out of the day-to-day, totally disconnected, where your team knows that you're not going to be available and they can't reach you. It gives you time to think about what's next, where are we going next. I did this earlier this year. I went back to school. I went to this program at Harvard that I started that's a 3-year program where I had to be on campus for a month at a time for 3 years and have 0% connection with the company. They tell you to delete email from your phone. You're working 80, 90-hour weeks in classes and class projects, and you had to totally disconnect from the company. But when I came back, I had hundreds and hundreds of ideas of what we could institute in the company and how we could impact the company. And it took creating that space. Day to day, my brother and I, we go for runs in the trails. And again, it just creates that space, that time to think. Vision needs space to appear. Every Thanksgiving, my family has this tradition where we put puzzles together. Does anybody else do that? A couple people? So we always get a puzzle, we put it together. And when you're putting a puzzle together, you've got clusters. You know, you're looking for things that, where's all the sky pieces? Okay, where's all the green pieces? You've got these clusters, and then finally it all comes together. And so the more space you create for yourself, you start to develop those clusters, those ideas. Maybe we could only do these products. Maybe we should have this kind of partner. Maybe we could do this to our pricing strategy. And then one day you wake up and you see the whole picture. But vision doesn't happen without space. And so if you want to level up your leadership, be thinking, how are you giving yourself that space? How are you creating more space for yourself for that vision to appear? All right, to summarize, it's simple. Organize the chaos in your business because chaos doesn't scale. Simplify down what you offer because you're probably doing too much. Build a culture of improvement so that the things you do continue to get better. And then constantly challenge yourself to be the leader your company needs a year from now by creating space today for those puzzle pieces to come together. All right, that's all I've got for you, everyone. Thank you so much. This is gonna be a fun day. Let's do this. Yeah.
Go over, Chris.